Hi guys, welcome back to another video, and today is an educational video again. So we're going to be looking at real life stories and real life situations that happen often and could happen to you in the building trade if you're out trying to get some of your own projects going. Today we're going to look at a situation. There's going to be a couple of key things in here. One thing we're going to look at is the importance of drawings, structural drawings. Again, I've spoken about this recently. I have to keep on reiterating how important this is for many reasons, and also why it's also important to do your own research as well, and not be pressured by anybody to do what you're not 100% sure is right. So we're going to look at this this situation. It's a post on a forum, and I'm going to read it for you real quickly, and then I'm just going to just dissect it and just give you a couple of points. It says, "I'm after some advice, please. Our extension has started and our ground floor has been approved as a ground bearing concrete floor with insulation above and screed over. This is what it is on the drawings and what has been approved on plan by building control. So basically 150 millimeters of hardcore, 150 millimeters of concrete slab, 100 millimeters of insulation, and then a 65 to 75 millimeters of screed." So I'll just quickly explain what's going on here. So this person has an extension that's already started. They're on the early days of the job. So they're on groundworks, they're on the concrete bearing slab. It seems like they probably have done their foundations already, i.e. their sort of trenches or whatever, DPC level, and now they're doing the what we call the oversite. So the oversite is essentially the internal floor area. So that typically in most cases it's done with concrete in the UK anyway, and basically typically will consist of, like what we saw on the post, was what we call hardcore, which is basically sort of recycled stones and sand and rocks and sort of things like that, which gets applied down to on top of the soil. It gets compacted with a machine. You guys might have seen me use that in a couple of videos, or some people call it a whacker plate. And basically it rams it and compacts it really tight together so that you've got sort of like a real nice firm base to build upon. Once you do that, then in the case of this particular project, they will put in 6 inches of concrete down, which is 150 millimeters of concrete, which it will level out. And then on top of that, they had 100 millimeters of insulation. It will be rigid board insulation, that sort of silver foil back stuff that you might have seen us use in many jobs. They'll put that down on the floor, and then on top of that, they would then put a screed, which it was 65 to 75 millimeters. So essentially that is sort of like a finished floor, the finished floor level of the house, and also it is the sort of finished floor which you would then lay your flooring onto. So that tends to be a sort of weaker mix with smaller aggregates. So it's like sand, sharp sand typically, and cement, and it's sort of mixed on a sort of weaker ratio than the concrete, and it tends to be a lot drier in most cases, and it's used to get a sort of perfect finished flat level of the extension or the house. Some people then put liquid finishes on top of that, like self-levelers. Some people do concrete and then just self-level straight over the concrete. Some people do the concrete as the finished final product. You can polish concrete as well. So, you know, some houses actually have polished concrete as their actual finished final layer. There are liquid screeds as well, which are basically the same as a normal screed would be, 65-75 mil, but it's all like watery, so it sort of self-levels itself as well. So there's lots of different types of screeds out there, but for this instance, this is what has been spec'd by the person who designed it, and also what has been approved by the building control. So it continues, "Now that the groundworks have started and the ground worker is digging down, my builder suggested this is overkill and is so far too much, and there's no need to have the concrete. His suggestion is to have 200 millimeters of hardcore whacked, then 100 millimeters of insulation, and 75 millimeters screed over. Am I right in thinking this is complete madness, as there's no real structure to the floor, or am I losing the plot? Any help would be appreciated. As an architectural technician with a fair bit of experience, I've never seen this done before. Maybe I've just come across this before. Has anyone else done this type of floor before and it works? So they've come up now with a situation where the builder is suggesting to do something that is different in the plans. So I'm going to reiterate this point again. You pay money to architects to design. You pay money to structural engineers to design, and you pay builders to carry out the designs of these people. Now, I will add that there are times that you do have to deviate slightly from designs, because in the practical world, sometimes some of the designs, sometimes architects can make these errors on their designs, things that don't translate to the real life, or things that may be missed out, or certain features that just not compatible with the design. Well, what the proper way to deal with something like this, especially a structural aspect, is to consult building control. Okay, especially if it's a structural element. If it's a design element, it's a little bit different. But anything that affects the structural integrity of the building, you either go back to your structural engineer and seek their advice, or you can have a conversation with building control maybe when they come out on a different inspection. Most, in my opinion, building controls are very happy to give you some guidance. They may not tell you exactly how to do it, but they will at least give you some guidance. And in this case, if they have an issue with this, they would probably straight up tell you whether they have an issue with that. Because the last thing you want to do is to do it, and then the building inspector comes out and does not agree with what's been done, and you spent so much money on having to dig things up. Now, there's another point I would like to mention here, is the difference between the concrete and a screed. So concrete typically is the structural integrity of your floor. Okay, some places, some countries, particularly in the States, they use a lot of rebar and little steel meshes and stuff in their floors. Obviously, America has a lot of places that have earthquakes and a lot of more natural disasters, where in the UK we don't really have much of those issues. So we don't really use steel meshes or rebars in our concrete for the most part. So we typically just pour the concrete and that's the end of it. So removing the concrete and increasing how much hardcore you're going to have does not deal with structural integrity of the floor. If you would just put an insulation down onto hardcore and put a screed on it, the chances are that screed will eventually be compromised. It would eventually break down, it would eventually crack, because there's no solid structure underneath to support it. So in my view, my suspicion would be that the builder was trying to find a way to not spend money on concrete, because out of the oversight, the concrete is going to be the most expensive element of an oversight. And some people can be a bit crafty. They try to save money, especially if they're not offering to give you any money back. Typically, if I had to change something on a job, and I was advising a client to do something another way, I would typically include in the conversation whether it's going to cost less or more. So if it's going to cost less, I'll be like, we can do it this way, it's a little bit cheaper for you, whatever, and the customer can save some money. If I feel like something's a better way, I might suggest it. I might say it might cost a bit more, but it might be a better idea as well. So you at least give the customer the options. So definitely I would say that this advice is very bad advice. And I did read the comments, and thankfully the customer did get the builder to do it the way it's done on the drawing. But if in doubt, refer your builder back to the drawings and absolutely insist that the builder follows what the building building structural engineer has designed or what your architect has designed. And if they really have an issue with it, try and get your engineer involved in the conversation and let them guide your builder. But in no shape or form allow your builder to dictate to you how your build should be done if you've already paid structural engineers to design for you. And as I've said many times before, this is your property, it's your house, it's your money. So ultimately, it's up to you how things are done. Now, you know, again, I tread carefully with this because, you know, you do have some customers who can be really, really difficult. And there's a lot of times you do need to listen to your builder. But in the cases where you're dealing with particularly structural issues, and when you have, as the OP said, they have drawings that have been already approved by the council, do not deviate from what has already been approved, because if you do deviate or you want to deviate, you will need to go back to them to get approval on the changes that you want to make. So yeah, just wanted to share it with you guys. I thought this might be a few nuggets that might be helpful for you guys to keep in mind for your own projects. So yeah, let me know what you think. If you learned something from this, let me know. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. So until then, take care.